Hi, I'm Nick. Welcome to Mid-Century Scotland. Those of you who follow me on Instagram will probably know that I'm a big lover of all things mid-century. And even though I live in Scotland, I'm a big fan of Americana as well. I guess the TV diet that I was brought up on a kid included a lot of American TV, and I got smitten. As you can see, there's a 57 Chevy lurking here, which is another project that's going on, so expect some videos on that. But today I wanted to talk to you about my love of signs and a new project that I'm working on. So I built quite a few mid-century Googie signs. Built a Christmas sign which went down really well. Show you a picture of that now. Motel sign for my kitchen, a few other signs around the house and garden that we've got. But recently I was re-watching the TV show Friends, as you do. I'm sure most people have seen it plenty of times. And lurking in the background in Central Perk is a service sign. And it's a bit of a googie sign. It looks like it's been a bit beaten up. It's obviously been around for a while. I don't know if it was built as a prop for the show or if it is actually a genuine sign that they sourced. I also recently built a LED neon sign, and I know LED neon might be frowned on by some people, but it's a very budget way to do some signs. So I thought, using some LEDs, I could potentially build a replica of the Friends sign, the service sign from Central Perk. So that's what I'm about to do. Welcome to the video. So to start this project off, I set out trying to find some images of the sign. So there are some stills from the show online. There are also some photos that people have taken from the Warner Brothers studio tour, where you can see the sign is part of that lot, part of the set still that you go and walk around. So I couldn't get a picture of the whole thing clearly, but I've managed to cobble together a couple of images of the sign in Photoshop, merge the two parts together. Then I drew round the picture so I could get a clear blank diagram of what it should look like, and then I could start to scale it up. And I scaled it up based on the size of the LED neon letters that I could get, and it actually works out to be 8 foot or 2.4 meters long, which coincidentally is the size of a sheet of wood. So that's handy. So I'm going to be building this from wood rather than metal. Again, I'm doing this on a budget, so it's going to be 2 pieces of plywood. There's also a banding that goes around to kind of give it its 3D quality, so I'll be making that out of wood again, and then painting the whole thing up and giving it a bit of patina like the one in the show, and then adding the neons and finishing it off. So should be quite a fun little project to do. I'm looking forward to it. So here's my sheet of 8x4 plywood. I took advantage of the in-store cutting service to cut it down in half lengthways. So now it's 8 foot by 2 foot, which is exactly the maximum perimeter size of what I need. I've also printed out the service sign that I made that's actually got a grid on it. And this grid is 10 centimeter increments. So from the measurements on here, I'll be able to work out exactly how big the sign should be, where all the different angles are and the different points of the arrow. So I'm going to get that laid up on the sheet and then I can start to cut it out. So here we go. As you can see, there's the service sign on the grid, and we've got that drawn out now. So you can see the arrow at the front doesn't come quite to the edge as far down as it does at the back. So there's the big fat part of the arrow through the back there. So to cut this out today, I'm going to use a circular saw. I've got into the Ryobi system ages ago. Having one battery for all tools kind of means you stick with one ecosystem, but there we go. So I'll use the circular saw and a straight edge to get some nice cuts on these, and let's get this arrow cut out. we go, pretty simple. There's the arrow and there's the huge arrow. I'm just going to give that a bit of a sand. So I need 2 of these exact same arrows. So after I've given this one a bit of a sand, I will use this as a template, draw around it and cut one out of the other sheet so I'll have both arrows. There we go, we've got 2 identical arrows now, ready to make the sign. The next bit to make are the walls that go between them, the sandwich, fill in for the sandwich if you will, that puts these 2 together to give it some structure and depth. So on to making the sandwich in the filling of the friend sign, and I've drawn a line around the edge recessed because the piece that joins the 2 arrows is slightly set back, so I'll be building it to that line. So I've got a piece of the wood there, it's a 120mm timber that we'll be putting around inside the arrow. So now I need to just cut all these bits to length, transfer the angles so I can measure the angles from where I created the arrow, and cut the bits of wood accordingly to make this frame that goes around the inside. And this frame will stiffen everything up, and it will allow place for the wire to go and all that kind of thing, and obviously it will look like the actual sign as well. Well, we've got these roughed out now. They need a bit of sanding, fettling, get them to fit better than they do. There's a few gaps. As with all kind of store-bought timber, there's a bit of a bow to this, but you know, let's not forget what we're building here. This arrow is meant to look old and patinaed, and it will have some patina paint on, so we don't need to be too precious about it. But yeah, pretty pleased with how it's going so far. Like I say, sand it, get it fitting a bit better, then I'll fix them to the board, and I'll fit some blocks to the other arrow so that it sits in here and you can screw through these sides into those blocks so the other arrow is removable for access. To get to the wiring, and of course while I'm building it I'll need that access too. On to the next stage. So I'm going to fix the sections of wood that go between the 2 arrows with glue and screws. So what I've done is on one side of the arrow I've marked the edge of where the wood will go and then drawn around the piece of wood so I know exactly where the thickness is, and then draw some holes through for the screws to go through. So I can screw through this side into the other, into the pieces of wood that go in the sandwich, and I'll also glue those as we go along too. Okay, so I've finished building the frame, the sandwich that goes between the 2 signs. It's not sanded or finished yet, but it's not looking too bad. So that's fixed to one of the arrows, glued and screwed. The other arrow has got 8 blocks mounted to it. So there's 8 screws through the sides here that hold that extra arrow. It's this one on the front. So you can just undo those 8 screws and you remove half of it to get access to the wiring and everything else that goes in between. So that's nice and easy, and I've started marking out where the service letters are. So this is a couple of layers. It's got a painted layer with the words on, and then over the top of that are the LED neons that I've got. On the actual sign they're slightly out of alignment, and that's what I'll be doing on this one as well. They're slightly different fonts, but I'm going to try and do it exactly as the sign in Friends. So here you can see where I've started marking these out. On the actual sign, it's one piece of glass. The whole service word is one piece of glass. and there's a hole at the front where the wiring comes through, and there's a hole at the back. Because I'm using the LED neons, each one's got a wire. So these circles here are where I will drill a hole for the wire to go through for each letter. And I'm going to use a piece of doweling to raise the letters away from the sign so they actually stand off like the original. And on the original sign it also has black pieces of glass between the letters, because it was one single continuous piece of glass on the original. They paint over the bits that they don't want to light up neon with black. So I'm going to try and fake those with some dowel to tie it all together. It's a nice dry day here today, so I thought I'd bring the sign outside because I need to sand it now, so rather than getting dust all over the garage. I've filled all the holes that needed filling, so I'm just going to give it a good sand and then I should be able to get the first layer of paint on. Inside now, everything's sanded down, ready to paint. So I'm just going to be using some grey emulsion on the first coat of this with a gloss roller to get a fairly smooth coverage. So yeah, might need a couple of coats. Let's give it a go. First coat on, hopefully it's starting to look more like a big chunk of metal now rather than a piece of wood. So it's definitely going to need another coat, so I'll get that on today. And then we move on to the other colours. Just looking to prep the letters for the sign. So looking at this E, for example, it's got these bits for hanging that I don't need, so I'm going to cut those out. Also, these can be powered by USB or by battery pack. I don't need the battery pack part, so I need to get rid of that from the cable as well, because I'm going to be threading this bit through into behind the sign, so I need this bit out of the way. So there we go, tabs removed, so it looks much cleaner, and the battery pack removed as well, so we can just thread that cable through to the back. Job done. Hey everyone, I've taken a bit of a break from the friend sign because I've been working on the Chevy, so I've got all the paint off that now, which is great, and it's time to put some more paint on the friend sign. So 3 coats of the grey on here, so it's looking a bit like metal. From the sign, I don't know if you can see this, there are some bits on the service sign that are rusted through to the metal, so I'm going to put some masking over those bits so they stay grey as I put the next coat on. So I'll mask those bits off, put the next coat on, which I will do the kind of beige colour that goes around the edges of the arrow and is also on the letters, and then I will mask that to put the red on, which is the bit that goes in the middle. So I'll get masking and we'll get on to the next stage. So here we go, I've done some masking up, some bits of patches that will stay grey and the next layer of paint on that match the patches on the sign, and they'll get painted aged afterwards. Everything will get aged on top of all the other bits and pieces, but that masking will really help. So the cream colour is on. Next stage is to start masking up before the red goes on. So the sign's all masked up, ready for spraying. Masking tape around the edge. These letters I printed out, cut around them, and I've used repositionable spray mount to stick them on so they can be pulled off afterwards. So I think it's looking good. Let's get some red paint on. There we go, we've got the red paint on. I'll let that dry overnight before removing the masking. So after just saying I would leave this till the next morning before taking the masking off, I took a little pick away at a corner and I thought, no, let's just go for it, let's get it off now. and I'm really pleased how it's come out. There's a little bit of bleed through on the letters, but I'm making an age distress sign here, so that's all fine as far as I'm concerned. And these bits where I masked through to the grey to make it look like bits of the other 2 layers of paint had come off have worked so well. So I'm really pleased with how it's looking now. So now I need to do some aging on the sign. I've got a pot here of diluted wood stain that I will just dab on with a brush, and then I will wipe it off with an old tea towel. So just keep adding and taking away, and I'll also use a bit of black paint as well, a bit of black spray that I'll squirt onto there, and just keep adding, just keep taking away. So now you can see I just keep adding and taking away. It's giving it much more of an aged look, more in line with the sign in the show. And it's just knowing when to stop with this. You've got to get it to the right point. So I've started using those bits of dowel. I'm just using super glue to fix these letters. And it's looking great. What I'm also going to do on the original sign, because it was glass neon, there were bits, because this would have been one glass tube that went all the way along. So there are bits that would be blacked out glass. So I'm going to fake those with bits of dowel as well. And fit those in between the letters. I'm really chuffed to say I've just finished the friend sign. So let me show you how it's come out. Here we go, the sign is done. Really pleased with how it's come out. I think it really looks like the one from the show. The letters aren't yellow like the one in the show, but that could actually be a bit of a white balance thing. If I turn all the other lights off in here, it does actually look more yellow. But yeah, this was just a couple of sheets of plywood, some LED lights and some paint. And it's cost around £80 for the lights. And I think about £40 or £50 worth of materials. But I've got an 8-foot long replica of the sign from Friends that looks absolutely awesome. So I'm really chuffed with it. Hope you enjoyed the build. If you want to see more things like this, just let me know in the comments. Suggestions for signs from other shows or anything like that. I'd be really interested to hear what you want to see. Thanks very much.